Hello and welcome to System Gold. This is Randall. I'm going to try to speak up so you could hear me clearly. I know that this microphone is probably crap, and when I put the boosters on, it leaves a loud background noise, so I'm just going to try to speak up there. I opened up the program. This is Corel Photo Paint X8, and this is a series I'm doing, taking from start to finish, doing a complete animation from beginning to end. And I'm not going to go over every possible tool that there is within the program, but I'm going to give you the tools that you can run with and create your own animation using your own creative licenses. So the first thing you do when you open up this program is you notice that there's a tab here, Welcome Screen. Now you can go through each one and see if this is something that might interest you in having this on the opening screen, or you could choose something else. If you want to choose something else or see what other possibilities there are instead of this screen, you can go to Tools, Options, General, and on a startup, it's on the Welcome screen, and I usually change it to nothing. I don't want anything there. So when I choose that, nothing happens. It's still there. To get rid of it, to get rid of any tab, you just hover over it, and there's a little X there. You X out of it, and it's gone. It's just, I don't use it, it's in the way, I don't need an extra tab on there, it's using up memory, etc. So the next time I start this program, it won't be there, it won't come up. So anyway, if you want to, the first thing I do is to create an animation file, and also a file that my first file that I can work and create different things on. And you can do that by either pressing this plus, start a new document, or do File and New. So I'm going to do File and New, and we're going to do the animation first. So I'm going to go to Custom, I'm going to go to Pixels, and I do 1080 by 720. 300 dpi. For an animation, you want a background. It doesn't matter what the background is. We're just going to choose white. Actually, let's choose something. Let's choose yellow. And there it is, because sometimes you might have something that has white in it and it's a pain. Yellow is probably not going to be using yellow, so this is the perfect. This is the full size. It's 100%, as you can see here. When you have your mouse, you can scroll and zoom in and zoom out depending on your needs, and you can always just click here and choose a percentage, or just highlight it and type in the exact percentage you want. The second file that I'm going to do, the plus sign here, and you don't have to name it right away, you can name it later, is you want pixels, you want to click custom and change it to 8 by 10, and click on landscape, click on no background, so it's 10 by 8, 24, it's always 24-bit RGB, number of frames is 1, because I'm going to show you how to set it up. This program, and then okay. This program is actually a lot like Photoshop. And you could do pretty much all the things that you can do in Photoshop. So you could edit photos and different things like that. The only difference is, in this program, you could also do animation. You don't do sound in this program, but you do the actual animation. So part of animation is creating images that you put in the animation. So this is where the image is created. So before I do anything else here, see, I zoomed out because I want to see the whole screen with what I'm working on, and if I want to see whatever I'm working on closer, I zoom in. So we'll leave it like this so you can see the whole thing. I'm going to start over here, and we're going to make a background. So I'm just going to show you a quick background. This over here is a tool. This makes solid objects. So if you click on it, you select that tool, and if you hold down, you click and hold down, then you see what other options there are. So I'm going to use the rectangle. Each one is a separate entity, and it saves whatever you did the last time you used it. So the last time I used this, I had an outline. I called it a border of 10. So in some programs, the border is a separate entity. So you make it, you make the object and the border. You could manipulate the border separately, or remove the border completely, or change the size of the border after the fact. Not in this program. So I'm going to, anything you left click is the border. So I'm going to click black, and anything on the inside the fill is the right click. So I'm going to do blue. Actually, I'm going to do this blue because that's the sky I'm going to use. Alright, so I make the object, and this is with a 10 border. So you have to decide whether you want that border. Now, if you're doing a lot of stuff with the 10 border, you're not going to want to change it to 0 and then change it back to 10, change it to 0, change it back to 10. It would be easier to just keep it at 10, right? So I'm just going to left click on the blue and do it again. And now the border is the same color as the fill, and it's the same part of the same object, so it doesn't matter. You could also go over here and get the fill tool and just click on this, but I didn't have it selected. Control Z to go back. First, you got to grab this tool and select it. The object that you know is selected has these little squares all the way around it. You could also go over here, and whatever's highlighted, object 2, the last object we did, is highlighted. So you click on this, the first object is selected, and you can see by these little squares. I'm just going to show you quickly, not how to use them, but the fact that it can do it. Every time you click on it, it goes to a different possibility of what you can do to manipulate your object. Now, you don't want to use those if at all possible, because every time you use those, you're taking a chance that you will make it a little bit blurry. So you want your object as clear as possible. Another thing is, when you're creating something, you don't want to create it small if there's a possibility that you want to zoom in on it. So if you want to make a person's face, you don't want to make a person's face this big, and then later on I'm going to do a close-up, and then I'm going to drag it up, and then every time you manipulate an object, you click apply, or the old school way is to just select this tool, whatever tool is here. You select it, and that's the same thing as apply. For the longest time I used that not even knowing about the apply feature. Somebody was like, why don't you use the apply? I actually like this better since I'm over here more often anyway. I have to go all the way over here. Anyway, let's zoom in on it. That's 100%. I don't see that much of a difference. But there are differences when you manipulate things. The more you manipulate it, the more blurry it'll get. And you want the best quality as you can. So I'm going to make a sky. So when you make a sky, you don't do it like that, because you want it to fill the whole screen. And you also don't want to go right to the edge and try to fill it, because it looks like you have it down, but when you do the actual animation, you might see that there's white on the side, or yellow in this case, on the side sticking out. So what you do to prevent that is you could actually take this and manipulate it, pull it out, and you can see how far you pulled it out by where those indicators are, those squares. And it wouldn't matter, because it's not going to lose any quality that way, because it's just a sky. So I'm going to select it, delete it, and the next thing, once you have something selected and you delete it, it automatically goes to the next thing. You can see it's selected, and you delete that. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to go off the screen a little bit. You click and hold, and you drag it to whatever size sky you want. You don't want to go too far. Just a little bit, just enough so you know it definitely is off the stage. I'm calling this a stage. Okay, so if I want to flatten this to the background, if I got it to where I want it, I select it and then do Control down. Now this is flattened to the background. Now this is one object. This is the sky, and this is the yellow ground. So the next thing I'll do is make green grass. So I'll right select, and I'll left select, because the border is still 10, and I'll grab this again. And I'm going to do the same thing, go outside a little bit, drag it. Now I don't want to go right up to here. Again, I'll have that problem with the yellow. So you want to go overlap it by a little. So if you want the sky, you bring the sky down a little bit more than you want, because you know the green grass is going to go a little bit higher. So you just want it enough where you know it definitely is not an issue. Now what I like to do is, now you could just leave this as grass. You don't have to do any special effects on it. It depends what type of animation you are doing. If you're doing something that looks kind of cartoony, you might do it one way. You might put borders on everything if you're doing cartoony. Or if you're doing something more detailed, then you're going to probably want to use less borders or very thin borders, and then make things more realistic looking by using blurs and different effects. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to Control C to copy this color, how it is, and this shape, and then I'm going to manipulate this shape. So I'm going to do adjust brightness, and I'm going to make it a little darker. So each of these settings, each of these effects and everything, save it exactly what you did last time. So if you're doing multiple, if you're putting the same effect on multiple items, it's great because you don't have to figure it out each time and have a different effect. It's going to be the precise, exact effect setting for each object that you do unless you change it again. Okay, so I'm going to bring this down and make it a little darker. Let's see what this does. Okay, so that's good. Maybe a little lighter. Okay, that's good. Okay, so I'm going to use the effects, and I'm going to use distort and wind. And when I do that, it makes it have kind of like a grass look to it. So this is what I've done this before, and this is the setting that I have already. And there it is. So now I'm going to do Control V and put that object at the original color the same way, and now I'm going to do the effect, distort, wind, and the same exact thing is going to happen. But this time, when the wind blows and it leaves spaces in what you do, what was underneath also is there. So, and you could even pull it down a little bit to give it that little extra effect. Now I want to show you something. As I said before, when you select an object, this shows you the ends of the object. Even if the object, if we saw the whole object, even if the object is only this, how we had it set up, you have to select it here. So if you want to select this object, if you're unable to click on it because there's so many different objects, it's not letting you click on it, you just want to go around the object. Now if you're not around the object enough, it's not going to select it. You have to keep going larger until you select it. The problem with that is you may select other objects. So in this case I selected two. But now I knew that there was two, and I went around them and I selected both. Now I know I can just hold down the Control and deselect one of them if I just wanted the top one, or deselect the top one. While I'm talking about this, you may have a bunch of objects, and you may have a bunch of objects in a row that you want to select instead of trying to figure out where they end and stuff like that, because it won't select it unless you go around the whole object, not just the object, but where like I said, these indicators. So until you select it, you don't know where those indicators are, so you just kind of have to feel it out. And if you have the full screen here, and you're selecting it like this, and it still didn't select everything, you could zoom out, and you could keep zooming out until you go as far as possible, and then you select it. And you might see that it's way over here, and you're like, that's ridiculous. If that's the case, you can use this tool here and cut the object down to size, and then delete all the extras. Even though the extras is just air, but it's more manageable if you cut it smaller in a smaller piece, and then you have it like that. Okay, so anyway, if there was a bunch of layers and you can't get to them all, there's a couple ways to do it. If you want them all the ones in a row, you select the top one, hold down Shift, and then select the bottom one. So there may be more down here, but you just want these three. It selects the first one, the last one, and all the ones in between. This is not a good example because there's only three. It would be better to show if there's 10, and you'll see more, but you get the idea. So if you don't want all in a row, suppose I just want the top one and some other one, the third one in this case. I hold down the Control button, and then you could select which ones you want. Maybe it's easier to select them all because there's a whole bunch, and there's only a couple you don't want. So you can select the first one, hold down Shift, select the last one, and then hold down, and then let go and hold down the Control, and then deselect certain ones that you don't want selected. There we go. So that's how that works. So in this case, I can do either one. I could hold down the Shift, the first one, and the first one, hold down the shift, and then the second one, or I could select the first one, hold down the control, and then do the second one, because they're both next to each other and it's doing the same thing. But just to let you know that that's an option. Another option is, suppose you wanted the light green underneath and the dark green on top. You can just grab one of them. You could grab the bottom one and drag it up, or the top one and drag it down. I'm just going to show you how it goes. So I'm selecting the top one, the light green. I'm going to put it right under the dark green, and that's how it is. And now to bring it back, I could just grab it and drop it back, but the easier way is to just undo it by doing Control Z. That undoes what you just did. Okay, so this is a nice grass. What I want to show you is that when you select both objects, now I was able to do it because I knew that they were just right there, and I was able to add the select tool. I click, and then I just drag it and let go, and it selects them both. If I do Control Alt down, instead of Control down, that'll flatten it to the background. Control Alt down flattens them to each other, so it becomes from 2 to 1, or however many you have. You could have 30 different objects, and you highlight them all, and you flatten them together. Now I could now move this object. Now when you change the color and the effects and everything, it only does what you see on the stage. So it didn't affect, well actually I think I just put it back, it overlapped that way. But when you do effects on it, it only does the effects on what is actually on the stage. So I'm going to do Control. So this is how you make an object, and you might not want to carry an object around with a bunch of layers to it, and you might not need to manipulate it anymore. We're done with the grass. I'm happy with it, so I'm just going to do Control Z and move it back to how we had it. But it's still one object. Now that I showed you how to do that, I can do Control down. But before I forget, and I've mentioned this before in other videos, if you do Control Alt down, and that makes those two objects flatten to each other, making an object a loose object that you can move, but it's not flattened to the background, but they're flattened to each other. If you do Control Alt down and your entire screen flips over, that means your hotkey on your PC is enabled. So first thing you do is Control Alt up arrow and make your screen right set up. Then you minimize this, you right click, and you go to graphic options, go to hotkeys, and click disable. Once you do that, the only hotkey that you will ever need is the one in this program. One of the hotkeys I just showed you. So the next thing we're going to do is make a cloud. Now again, I'm going to left click for the border and right click for the fill, and we're going to use ellipses. Now the last thing that I did was 5, so we're going to see if that's big enough. So when you're doing things, see how cartoony it looks? And if I left clicked on this, now this is the cloud. It's not the full cloud, I'm going to make a cloud, but I'm just saying it looks a lot cartoonier with the border. So you have to decide what kind of cloud you want, what kind of animation you're going to do. Because you kind of want to stick with the cartoony look, you want to be consistent. Although you could have very detailed background and then have cartoony characters. I've seen that done too. In SpongeBob they all have borders, all the characters and stuff. In the background, not so much. So if I'm remembering correctly. So I'm going to show you quick 2 different ways to do it. We'll do the cartoony way first, and then you can just make a cloud. You just add different things to it. Now I'm going to do left and right click, and then I'm going to leave a little bit of it sticking out. And then, like I said before, you highlight all those and then Control Alt down. Now this is one object. This is a cloud. It's a cool looking cloud. Now I'm going to do right and left click, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. And that looks like a cloud. And I'm going to Control Alt down, and this is a cloud. And again, you can manipulate this cloud You could copy and paste it and manipulate other ones so you're using the same cloud but you're doing different things, or you could just make new clouds. Um, One thing that you could do also is, for one thing, you could blur it, but also you can put some shading on it. So a cloud is usually not pure white, it has some grays in it and stuff. So I'm going to do Control C, Control V, and I'm going to uh, change the brightness on it to make it a little gray. We don't want it that gray. So we're going to, let's put these at 0. Okay, so that's all white without any effects. Now let's just go a little bit. Let's try -2. It's very light. Okay, now we're going to use the eraser tool. So we have to decide how much. First, you can choose a solid erase or a blended erase, and you get some choices here. There's also different patterns if you want to use. And then if they don't have your exact, these are just, it's easier, just grab 50, grab 100. But if you want a different size, the last time I used it was 150, I'm going to use 200. See what that does for me. So then you can erase different things in it and give it some dynamic, like that. Maybe I'll do something a little smaller. Let's try the 100. Sometimes when you select it, it doesn't change it. So you select a different one and then you go back to it. So I'm going to go to all the bumps and click erase. And a cloud is kind of like a cotton ball, but you don't want it to look like cotton balls. You kind of want it to look like a three-dimensional solid object with different parts to it. So you kind of just keep working until it looks pretty decent. Now you might say, you know, that gray is actually too light. I wanted it subtle, but now it's too light. I don't remember which one it was. So you select the select tool, and then you selected this one highlighted. So you know it's these two. And the bottom one is the dark gray. Or was it which one was the white one? If you're not sure, okay, this white one is the second one. So we want to change the gray, which is the top object. So I'm going to do Control Z to bring it back. And I'm going to adjust again and make it a little bit darker. Let's make this 1. What you could do too is select that one, Control C, Control V, and then adjust it and make it even darker. Let's go for 4. And we're going to move that one below the other gray one. So we got this gray one, and you could label these over here. You just click on it, and then you could type what it is. So that way it's easier. I'm usually going through this too quickly to have to worry about that. And when I'm done, I'm just going to flatten them all together also. So I'm going to add another layer of gray to give it even more dimension. So the top one is the light gray, the middle one is the dark gray, and the bottom one is the white. So I'm going to select the dark gray, and I'm going to do some erasing again. Let's do a bigger Control Z. Let's do a bigger size. Let's do 200. See what that gives us. Yeah, it all depends on how much time you want to spend on it, and you can just do different layers of darkness to it. but that gives it more dynamic. So you get the light gray and the dark gray and the white, and that's your cloud. Another thing you can do also, Control Alt down, we're making it into one object, and when you're doing something that's less cartoony without the objects, you can put a little blur on it too to make it more realistic looking, because it's not very realistic, even though it has different layers and stuff like that, to have a perfect curve and stuff like that. So you make it a little blurry by selecting it, go to Effects, Blur, and you go to Gaussian Blur. Now you can keep increasing it and see how blurry you want it. And the blurrier you get, you see the outside like that. So maybe you just want a little bit of a blur. Why are those lines there? That's weird. Okay, so that's good. That looks like it's good to me. So that's one cloud. Over here you can do the same thing with adding gray, but you want to do it differently. You select this tool. Now this is a tool that can cut things. So if I selected this rectangle, first you have to select the object. Make sure it's selected. Then you select the tool. Now you click and hold it down and you drag it. And it makes a mask. Now a new feature that they just added not too long ago is this, where you can actually just move once you make the mask, you can move it around to get it more precise. Then you have to go back to your tool, and then you could just delete, or you can cut and paste it so it's a separate object and you move it, etc., etc. Or you can just move it and it separates. Control Z to bring it back, Control Z to undo this. Also, when you go over here, you click and hold down, and then there's all these other options. So I'm going to show you how to use the magic wand mask. So these are all about making masks, and then you could do things. You could fill those masks, or you could do lots of things. I'll be showing you along the way. I'm not going to describe them now. It's a waste of time. So I'm going to select this wand. So the wand selects all the open space that's outside of the border. So if you have a space in the border, it might bleed out and select everything else. So I know we have a solid, a nice connecting border, so it's just going to select everything in here. Now, this will select the inside as much or as little as detailed or as not as possible. So you might have something that's very detailed, and you want to select a certain color in there or something. You might want just a general take on it, or you might want something more specific. And to change that, the tolerance, specify the range of affected colors. So as you change that higher or lower, it affects how you take this. So when you copy and paste this, you can see how much of the black is taken with it, if any. If there's black taken with it, you might want to decrease the tolerance and stuff like that. So I'm going to do Control C and Control V, but it's not selected. So I'm going to go back to the selection tool, select this, and again, if you're not sure, you can go over here. This was the first object we did, so this one will be the first one if you remember, but you might have tens of objects and not remember which is which, so you just select it and find out. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the tool, because after you select it, it's still selected. Now you have to go back to the tool. If you leave it on the selection, it's not going to do what you want it to. Okay, so I'm on the tool. I'm going to do Control C to copy, Control V to paste, Control R to get rid of the mask. And now I'm going to adjust the, you don't have to adjust the bright. You can just select a color. You select the lowest gray, and then select the filler tool, and I'm filling the whole screen because the background was selected. I think it was this one. But now that tool isn't selected. Okay. I have the correct thing selected, but I don't have the object. Actually, no, it would be top, because I copied and pasted. Whatever you paste it, it becomes the top. So the inside of this white is now the top. The bottom of the cloud is now the bottom. It doesn't matter that they're separate, because you can just select them both, Control X, Control V, and then they will both be top if that's important to you, if you need that feature. Okay, so now I selected the top one, adjust brightness. Actually, I wasn't going to do that. I was going to use the fill tool. I already selected the gray. Select this object and fill it. Jeez. Okay. So look how nice that looks. So now you want to, and you can, because it's cartoony, you may not want to use the eraser, the blending eraser. You may want to use this tool where you're selecting part of it like this. So when you select it, it's supposed to be that circle. If you see the circle and the entire screen selected, that means it's the inverse. So in all actuality, I'm selecting everything but what's inside that circle, and that's not what I want. If that happens, it might mean that I'm using the program for too long and I'm running out of cache memory. So I just do, to avoid that, if I say I don't want to save my file, and because I'm in the middle of something, once I finish what I'm doing, then I'll save it. I'll shut everything down and reopen it, and it'll be cleared. It'll be fine. But I might be in the middle of it and not want to have to deal with that. So in order to keep going and avoid it, a trick is Control Alt I. Why is this not working? Okay, let's try this again. There we go. Whew. Okay, Control Shift I. I was telling you the wrong information. So I'm selecting this, and then you could actually use the arrows to move it exactly where you want it. But once you get it to where you want it, then you go back and select the tool again, and the right layer is selected and everything, and then you just do delete. Or if you want to use that somewhere else, you could just do Control X and cut it, and Control V and paste it, and then you have it to use somewhere else. So Control R gets rid of the mask. So because it's cartoony, everything is kind of perfect. You got the perfect border and the perfect shading and stuff like that. You may also want to use, if you want to use do this by hand and use the eraser instead of the fading one, you use this one. That's too big. The 51. So you can actually go over here, and it's not as precise, but it's not faded. So you can see what I'm doing here. I actually like it better cutting it out like that. Okay. So I'm going to Control Shift and I. I don't know why I didn't remember that. Okay. So what's good about this is you can manipulate this as well. So I'm going to select the middle, leave this in the middle because this is the hinge where it turns, and I'm going to turn this a little bit. I'm also going to select it again, grab this corner and bring it in a little bit. Okay. The problem is I'm going to be cutting, no it won't. Well, I'll be cutting this part of the gray here. So let's see how that works. Select the tool, Control X, Control V. Now you can Now this is what you just cut is on top. If you want it to go all the way to the end, you can just cut this. See, it's a pain when it does that. Control X. Control V. This can come out. Okay, see what happened there. So I'm going to select just this. Each time I have to do Control Shift I. It's a pain in the neck. Cut that again. Once you cut it, whatever's left you want to get rid of it, you just press delete before you paste it. Now Control V and paste it. And you want to make sure that there's no space there. So you could zoom in up on it. You also can go over to this magnifying glass, click and hold it down, and it'll give you pan. So when you zoom in, you're not zoomed in on what you want. You grab and hold it down, and you can just move the whole screen. So I see a little bit of a line there. So what I'm going to do is Control V and paste it a second time. And then with the arrow, move it up a little bit to cover that line. Okay. So I am going to continue with this. There's different objects now. So we want to select the main, what's left. And we'll do the same thing here. Control Alt I to inverse. We're going to delete all that. Actually, Control Z. We're going to cut it and paste it because we're going to do the same thing. We're going to want part of this still up to here. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to cut this here. Control Alt I, and I'm going to do Control X. I'm going to select this, delete it. Oops, I don't want to delete that. I just want to delete this part. So you select this whole thing, and you use this tool. If you're not right on it, you at least want the same angle. And then you grab this, and you bring it over right up to the black. When you invert, it moves it a little bit. So I'm going to do Control Shift and I. Control Shift and I. Why is this not working? Okay, Control R, get rid of the mask. Let's try it again. I just want, let's try to get a little closer here. There we go. Control Shift and I. There we go. We'll cut that, delete what's left, and paste it. And we're going to do Control C, Control V again, and drag it down in case there is a little line, which I just took care of. So you could decide whether you want the gray to be how you want the gray, if you want it to be a straight line there, or if it's a straight line here. So I think I think it makes more sense. Oh, so this is just a little piece here, so I could just cut this piece. There's actually two pieces there. So what I'm going to do is highlight both of those pieces. You got them both. Control Alt down. Now they're one piece. And now I'm going to use this tool and cut them. Okay. And I could even go a little more because there's a little gray on the end there. You can go crazy with the details. You don't want to leave, if you click on something and then it leaves these here, it's not going to let you do anything else until those are gone. So you do Control R to get rid of them all. What you want to do is scroll down to 100 and say, do I really see that gray? This is 100%. This is what you're going to actually see. So you got to see if there's something about this that you like or don't like. So once you got this, I'm just going to put a little bit more gray here, and then I'll be done. And these can probably be a little thinner. If I was actually doing this, I would actually probably make these a little thinner. So I'd go in there and cut them a little bit more. But just for our sake, you get the idea. And you can spend as much or as little time as you want on these. So I'm going to, I got this one, and I remember the border is 5. We got the black. No, we don't want the black border. We want this color. So I left and right clicked on it. And we're going to use this object. Okay. Well, that didn't work out well. So I think I'd rather use the circle. Would make more sense. Because you want it right up to the black there. There we go. Okay, then you use this tool to cut it. Now you can use, get rid of the eye on that. And move this so it flows with the rest of the circle. Now you click the eye, you click the tool, and you click delete. Control R, get rid of that circle. We didn't get quite enough of it, so we're going to do Control Z to bring that circle back. Press on this tool, and we're going to bring this up a little bit. I'm going to select the tool, click delete, Control R, and now it's perfect. And we're going to use this tool, and we're going to go from this angle that this is cut. Control Alt I and delete. Control R. So that looks good. Another thing you can do, now let's select all of this. So the background is this one. Okay. So instead of moving it and then you have to figure out how to put it back, you just press the eyes. Now you select everything else. It doesn't select what you made invisible. It doesn't select that. You do Control Alt down and you make this all into one object. Then you put your eyes back on. Now, if you want, you could make this part a little blurry. Blur, Gaussian blur. And see how nice that looks? Has a nice blended look to it, which is what we were trying to avoid. But it actually looks nice in this. So if you want to see it with or without the effects, you can click preview. That's how it looked before. And if that were the case, I would want to probably cut it in a little bit more to make it not less drastic, and probably make that gray a little lighter as well. But in this case, I got that. In fact, I think I want to make that a little bit lighter. So I'm going to put this at 0, and then add this. And then it's more subtle. It's more natural looking. But it definitely looks better with the blur on it in this case. So blur, Gaussian blur. There's different blurs for different reasons, and I'll show you them as we need them. And there you have it. There's the two different clouds. Control Alt down, this is one object, and this is another object. So we're going to cut both of these, Control X, and there's still two different separate objects, Control V, and there's the two clouds. That way if we ever need these clouds again, we can just copy them and paste them. Because I already started with the grass looking like it has more details on it, I'm going to keep this one. What you could do too is you copy it and paste it. You can manipulate it, turn it upside down. You can do different things, and it's blurry, so it's okay if it gets a little blurry because it's already blurry. But you don't want it to look like the same cloud as before. I think I'm going to put a little bit more blur on the second one here. And then I'm going to delete some of it using the 200 and using the blended 200. Well, that was a waste. See, these are the different issues that you have when you're doing this crap. Okay, so we're going to take these two, and we're going to make a cloud out of it. looks too similar on top and bottom, so I want to change it up a little bit. Add another bump, or add something to it. And then you got to blend it in with the. Okay. You don't want clouds to be too symmetrical. Control Alt down. So there's my cloud. And you could even turn it upside down if that makes more sense. Grabbing one of these and you could also make it a little bit smaller. Sometimes these clouds go together and they go off the screen. You like that. Or you could just have those two. However you want. I just don't like the same exact cloud, so I want to do something to it. But as you can see, you can mess around with it, and that's what clouds are. You mess around with it until you get something decent looking. I'm just going to leave those two. Actually, I'll do that. Okay. Now I'm going to Control X, Control V, paste them there, and also paste them there. So you have two more clouds. Well, this is the same one, but this is the exact distance apart and everything too. You could even, if you want, take these. Actually, you already have them selected, so you Control V and paste them again. Control Alt down. So these are the exact same spaces. This is one object now. These are two separate, so you can move one, because if you're doing a different if you're doing movement in the screen, if a character goes across the screen into the next screen, maybe just this part and maybe some of this will be showing, because this will have moved. So you want them to move together in the exact same way. For now, I'm going to Control down. As you see, I did it a bunch of times. Sometimes you're working with something that you deleted or whatever, and it still shows that there's a layer, but there's not actually anything on that layer. So this is the sky, the clouds, and the grass. And let's make a couple trees. So we want to grab the brown. Let's use this as the border. And we'll use this as the fill, like a reddish. And we'll grab the polygon, 5 outline. Let's see what that looks like. Double click, and then it forms. That's a reddish tree. And now we want to make branches, so let's make little branches. Okay, there's one. Usually I make 4. No, it's not even touching. you try to deselect it and nothing happens, you just select background. Because sometimes when you have it selected, you can't see everything because of those little indicators are in the way. So you just select something else. Zoom in and get a good look at it. Make sure it looks good. So this is the tree. And now we're going to do the green part. We'll hold down this green. Select the border as dark green. And the fill is grass green. Let's see, what was that border at? 5. Let's try 10. Let's try 15. That's okay. It doesn't have to be covering every leaf. This is generally how I make trees. So then we want to put details in the actual tree to make it look like leaves. So we'll do, the first thing I'll do is copy it and paste it. And we'll fill it with this lighter color here. And we'll bring this one on top of the other one. And then we'll do the eraser tool and we'll put it at 200. Enter. Okay. So I'm selecting this one. I'm going to select Shift and select the next one since they're next to each other. Control Alt down and they're together. Now I'm going to select it again and do Effects, Texture, Elephant Skin. That reddish looks kind of nice. We could select something green. And that would work out well too. That looks nice. Okay. Now we're going to select everything but this. So we're going to turn our lights off to that. Select something else. This is the selector tool. We're going to combine all this. So this tree is one object. Now we're going to put the eye back on that. Zoom in a little bit on this. Select this tool. Now if you're doing, when you select the magic wand, okay. We're continuing to do that stupid Control-Alt-I because I'm in the middle of something again. But when we zoom in, see that's too much of a zoom in. Let's try 150. Okay. Now that only did this, and I want to select this. If I did that, you can continue to go and select things. This is very difficult to do, being that it needs to be inverted. So I might just do one at a time here. Okay, so I could do Control C and Control V, but I'm just going to do the texture and elephant skin again. But I'm going to use something brownish. I have the wrong thing selected, that's why. The tree is selected. Okay, let's try this again. Effects, texture, and elephant skin. It's inverted, so it did it to everything except for what I just selected. What a pain in the arse. Control. This isn't giving you a very good look at this program, being that you have to deal with this crap. But I only have to deal with it because I have to save everything and restart the program because it's been sitting for a while. Once I do that, everything will work fine. Okay, so I'm going to do the effect, texture, elephant skin, and I wanted something brown, not green. So I'm going to go over to where the reddish colors are. That looks good. Okay, that's good. So I'm going to select this. Control Alt, get rid of that one. Select this. Control Alt, Control Shift I, and do the same thing. Effects, texture, elephant skin. It's already set for that color. Control R. Select this. Control Shift I. Effect. You could learn how to work around this stuff very easily. Control R to get rid of it. Select this. Control Shift I. Effect, texture, elephant skin. Boom. Control R. Then you got to see if you want to be bothered with this over here. Control Shift I. Effect, texture, elephant skin. Okay, we want this one here. Control R to get rid of that one. Select this one. Control Shift I. Effect, texture, elephant skin. Control R. And last but not least, these two here. Okay, I'm doing the same thing. Texture, elephant skin. Boom. Control R to get rid of it. Select this. Control Shift I. Effect, texture, elephant skin. Boom. And boom. And there is our tree. And that's a magnificent tree. We could also, if we wanted to, add another piece to make it round at the bottom, to make it more three-dimensional. So to do that, you can just make a circle with this tool. First you want to select the tree, which I think it's already selected, but let's just check. Okay, it's selected. Go to this tool. And select this. Control C, Control V. Okay. And I forgot to do the invert. So let's try it again. You know what we'll do? We'll select, we have this tool, so we're going to select this color and this color for the inside. that's okay. This will work. Well, you know what? Let me go to 10. Okay. So it looks a little big at 10. Back to 5. Maybe somewhere in the middle. 7. Select this. Well, that works out in a way, but not really. We're just going to keep going with it. We want to cover this black here, this brown there, with straight red, which we have done. But we're going to need to cut both of these sides so they're straight, they're flat. So we'll do that. Control Alt I, delete. Control Alt I, delete. Effects, texture, elephant skin. And now we're going to select, let's deselect this. That way the only thing, everything else is going to be selected. Control Alt down. We turn this on. We select this. Control X and cut it. And paste it over here. This is where we create everything. And we're going to make this 100. Control V. Now I know we don't want a tree this big, so we're going to manipulate it and bring it in. Nice looking tree. If you get it to that size, you like it, Control Alt down, Control C, Control V, and you can do a bunch of them. The problem is you don't want to, if you want one that's bigger, you don't want to make it bigger because it's going to be blurry. So if you want them all around the same size, this works out perfectly. You may even want some that's a little smaller. So you take this one and make it a little smaller because then it's further away. And then you can do every other. Some in the background, some in the forefront. So the ones in the background are pretty much the same level. Not really. Doesn't have to be perfect. But if you wanted them to be perfect, you make a rectangle and you bring that solid rectangle up to where you want it. You might want to make it a different color because they are already red, so let's make it yellow. That way we can see what we're doing. And we're going up to this yellow here. So this one, let's see where these boxes end up. So we want the boxes just to touch. Just to touch, barely touch. So you just move this up so they're barely touching. You figure out a way to make each one consistently the same. And you can get crazy with the spacing in between them. Again, with stuff like this, in real life, trees are not exactly the same width apart and stuff like that. Um, and I just want to show you quickly on how to make a shadow. I'm not going to give all these shadows. We're just going to leave them as they are because I'm just doing a quick demonstration. We're not going to make the best animation in the world. We're going to make a decent animation, and I'm going to show you different techniques. I'm going to show you the different possibilities. There may be some things that you like about these trees. There may be some things that you hate. There's lots of different ways of doing things. This is just one way that I did things. You could even make it so you don't see any of these branches and just put the green on the outside. So you just see this part of the tree and then you just see green over it. This is one way where you see the branches. So anyway, I'm going to take one of these, Control C, Control V. I'm going to put it over here. First of all, if this is our setup, I'm going to do like I did the other one. Select all these trees, Control X to make sure I do Control X to make sure I got them all. Because if I do Control C and do Control V, I might not realize I'm missing one. Control V to put them back. Then I go over here, I put all my trees right where they are. Then I can do them again, and then do Control Alt down. Now I have a version that's, I could move them around if I wanted to, but I also, this is exactly how I have them, so if I just want to move them and keep them in the same distance that they are now, I'm good to go. So I go back over here and I want to show you how to do a shadow, just so you know how to do it. I'm not going to do it in this animation, at least not in this section. So I'm going to take this Control C, Control V, and I'm going to grab it. I click on it again, and when it gets to these symbols, you go to on top of that circle in the middle. When it turns to a plus, you click it and grab it down to where you want the hinge, like on a door, the door hinge, the part of the door that opens and closes. So now I'm going to take these. You don't want this one because this one will make it skew. This one actually turns it, but it turns it based on the hinge. Like this is the door, I'm going to open the door, close the door. So I'm going to bring this tree down, and I got to figure out where I want my shadow, depending on what time of day it is. So we're going to bring it like that. I click apply because I just manipulated it, and once I completed that manipulation, I press apply. Now I'm going to bring push this down so it's a shadow, and I click apply again, or I could click this, which is what I usually do. Click select tool, and then I could just use the arrows and bring it over to the bottom of the tree. You could have it touching or not. Okay, you might say that's not a shadow. Of course not. I'm going to select this, Control M. That selects the object, but of course it's still messing up, so I'm going to do Control Shift I, and then it gives me what I want. I do not want to copy this image. This image is only a reference to make that exact shape that I want. Okay, so now I'm going to select the background. I'm going to do Control C. I'm going to do Control R to get rid of that. I'm going to select this, delete it, Control V. I pasted the object there. You can't tell because it's the exact same color as the background because I copied the background in that same shape. Now I go to adjust, brightness, and now I'm going to make it darker. So when you see a shadow, you don't see something that's black generally. You might describe it that way, or gray, but what you're doing is you're seeing a darkness over the background. So if you're on red brick, it's going to be a darker red brick in your shape or the shape of whatever is casting the shadow. If you see a wooden table, or if you see a white wall, or you see green grass, it's going to be a darker version of whatever you do. So in this case, we want to make it darker. If it's a little bit over 4, that doesn't make a big difference. But if you're a stickler on that stuff, you put 0 all the way down, and then you slowly drag this over until you get the darkness of the shadow that you would like. So you can make it as dark as you want. It could be almost black, or you could make it just very subtle. And that's the shade. Also what I do is I take this, when I'm done making the shadow, Control X to cut it, and Control V to paste it. So this object is on top of the shadow and not the shadow on top of the object. Because when the shadow casts, it doesn't cast on the outside of the tree. It only casts next to the tree. So if you have some of it underneath or on the tree, you just take this and paste it on top of it, and that way it looks like it's coming right off of it. You could also move this if you wanted also. So there's a little bit of a space. If this tree were off the ground, you might look like that. So you could use these different, you could use the shading to show somebody does not have their feet on the ground, or that they are in the air and stuff like that. So this doesn't make sense for this tree to have this shadow, because this tree is only this small because it's way over there. It's way in the background. So I'm going to get rid of this, but at least now you know how to make a shadow and all the things that you need to know behind it. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to flatten them to the background. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a street. So to make a street, we're going to select a black. And I'm going to select this, and again I'm going to go on the outside and drag it up. So I may not want this much of a street, but I know that I want, that I'll probably overlap it at some point. So I make the black street. I'm going to do Control down so it's flattened to the background. Also, before I go any further with this, I'm going to do what I said and save it. So I'm going to save this animation as, let's save it as animation. And this animation is an AVI. So you select this, you go down. I already have that file, so that's why that came up. But you want to choose an AVI file, which I don't see here. Okay, the reason why it's not an AVI file is because it's not an animation yet. I skipped a step. Okay, so to make this from an image into an animation, you select this tool, Create Movie. You just select it, now you're a movie. You're a one, you only have one file here. You are on one of one. So now I can save it as an AVI. Save it as, I could have saved it as an image, but I want to save it as an animation. So I'm going to save it as animation. And now it's under AVI. And I'm going to save it to my desktop. And I generally leave it uncompressed. And now this one is my animation stuff. And you put this as a CPT, that's the Corel Photo Paint image. That means that it'll stay how it is with no background, and you can go and you can move your objects around. It's not attached to anything. So I'll save that again. Now I can X out of all this, and now I can open it back up. And now I can file and open. And one was animation, AVI, and the other one was, you can't open there. You can only create a new one. So here you could actually open. I should have did open recent. but I remember it was animation again stuff. CPT. Okay. So now let's finish this. We're just going to finish this background, and then that'll call it a day for this first video. And I apologize if it seems a little long, but I'm going over a lot of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to try to go through this really quickly. The first thing I'm going to do is make a curve. So I'm going to select this yellow, and I'm going to select the darkest yellow that there is. So we'll select that, and I'm going to create this about that big. Why is there a line in it? No one knows. That is really odd. Things are just really going well for me today. Okay, we're going to select this color. There we go. And now we're going to do texture. We're going to do the elephant skin, and we're going to do a different color, yellow. We don't want anything to stand out too much, but we don't want it to be too perfect. And now we're going to do effect, texture, and we're going to do plastic. The reason I know all this stuff is because I've done it for a long time. Okay, so we got our curve here. Now I'm going to go back. Let's see, get texture, and we're going to do plastic. This looks good. And I'm also going to put a sidewalk. So I'm going to do a lighter sidewalk. Grab this and put it below the other one. But let's put it up there so we can see what we're doing. We're going to do effects, texture, stone. And we're going to bring the roughness down to almost nil. And we're also going to grab something a little bit darker and grab the line tool. That line looks pretty good. Control C, Control V, and the best way to do it is just to move the arrow to the right until we get enough space that we want. Then we highlight and grab them both now, copy, Control C, Control V, do the same thing. So you don't see it moving because you're holding it down, and when you're holding it down you don't see it moving. So every once in a while you let go, and then you adjust it. I went a little bit too far. We want them to be pretty much the same amount of space. So now I'm going to copy all four of these, and I'm just moving it. I could pick them up. First of all, they're hard to pick up. I'd have to zoom in to grab them because they're so small. It's hard. I'll be selecting the sidewalk rather than those lines in the sidewalk. Okay, so let's go a little bit further. I think the easiest way is just to go this way. I made one extra, one too many. So I'm going to highlight that one, delete it, and all the rest look good. So now I'm going to take this, turn it off, Control Alt down and make it into one object. And I'm going to put this back on. And now I'm going to look to make sure that none of the lines are going past. These are lines in the pavement. We don't want them to go past the pavement because then it would be kind of silly. Okay, so I'm going to take these, the sidewalk and the lines, Control Alt down and put them together. Now I'm going to do Control C, Control V, and I'm going to do the adjust brightness. The adjust brightness is wonderful because you could just pick a color and make it a little darker and erase some of it, and now you have shading on whatever you just did. So we want 0, that's the original color, and we just want it slightly darker. Okay, so we want the erase tool. And let's just okay. We don't want everything to look perfect like it's an animation that I just created. We want it to look like it's a real sidewalk. So we take this, we want to make sure this is above it, which it's not. So I'll just do Control X, Control V, now it's above it. And I'm going to bring this underneath it. And I could decide if I want to bring it underneath it a little more, or I could shave some of it off. Meanwhile, I'm going to take a piece of this and copy it. Hit background, Control C, Control V, Control R. Isn't it nice that we could do all that stuff and not have to worry about Control, Shift, and I for invert? It's such a pain in the neck. Okay, so I'm going to do what am I going to do? Adjust brightness. I'm going to make that a little darker, which we did. Let's make that 5. If when you're moving it manually, it might go too fast, so you could just go in there and change it. It's already negative, so you just change the number to 5. I think that's what we're looking for. Now I'm going to make it a little bit blurry. Effects, blur, and jaggedy special. Now, what I'm doing, you don't have to necessarily do. That's not the one I wanted, obviously. I'm just showing you what you can do, so you could start thinking about how you could do these different things. One thing that I forgot to do that I usually do is put a little shading in the tree. Let me just do this first before I lose my train of thought. Gaussian blur. Okay. And then let's move that. Actually, this can all go Control X, Control V underneath this. So this shows you that the grass is grass. It goes up. You know, I could even put the effect distort wind on it if I wanted to. And bring it down. But you want it to be a little bit more subtle, but that's perfect. It gives your grass a little bit more depth, because when you're going off the sidewalk, the grass is sticking straight up. It's not like a flat piece of paper, and you can see how it goes up over here. And then we could always put some shading with the trees, which we decided not to do. So this is all done, and in fact, if we wanted to, we could move this whole thing. We can move it over if we wanted. We can move it as far over as we want. Let's move it right about there, because we need some room to make a road. So now we're going to grab two yellows. Um, let's grab this one. And we do effects, texture. Use the elephant skin a lot to crack things up a little bit. Let's make this a little bit darker. And let's copy and paste it and bring it down. And these are actually way too big, so I'm going to actually select them both and bring them both in. There we go. Control Alt down and made them into one thing. Control V, adjust the brightness, make it a little darker. You're starting to get the gist of it, of what I'm doing here with some of these effects. Okay, and then I'm doing the eraser tool. Combine them. I think we're going to put it over here. Now if we wanted to show the car on this side of the road, then we would move this whole thing up and then we would continue creating the road. So we would do something like this. Control C, Control V, Control R. And we would move this here up to here. And we would put a black thing here. And then however much room we needed, we would just keep extending it. And then the car can drive by on this side of the road. But instead, we're just going to keep it as is and leave it like that. What I was mentioning before, if I remember what it was, what was I talking about? Oh, the trees. So I usually take the trees, like I just showed you, like I do, copy it and make it a little darker or a little lighter depending on what I'm doing, and erase some of it, and that gives it more three-dimensional or more of a, more of a dynamic tree. You could also make some a little bit slightly skinnier, slightly taller, slightly fatter. So they're not all perfect, but these are kind of like bushes. So, but they can be whatever you want them to be. Sometimes when people set up trees, they set them up to sell, or they set them up for a park, or they set them up however, and they set them up in a perfect order. Tree up front, tree in the back, tree up front, tree, in whatever pattern they feel like. So the next thing we do is, in addition to saving this animation, we grab this tool, we go like this, Control C, Control R to get rid of the mask, We go over here and we save this as our first background. And that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed what you heard so far, and I hope you enjoy the entire series. So this is Corel Photo Paint X8. The X9 is out. There's not a lot of differences. I'm going to be getting it at some point. And even if you have one that's a little bit older, maybe this the X7, you're still going to be able to follow along with this. Go through each video and try out the different things I'm teaching you. Try out the different tools, try out the different techniques. Maybe even come up with some of your own. But at least you'll have the tools to run with it, to come up with your own thing. You won't say, well, I figured out how to make a tree, but how do I animate? The purpose of this is to not only learn how to use this program, but understand animation and the different pitfalls that or challenges that you run into, and how to overcome them, and how to make your animation complete, how to make yourself keep going when things are tough. There's always a way to figure out how to go around things. And if you have any questions, leave questions in the comments, and press the button to subscribe so you know when each video is coming up. Thanks for watching. Take care.